Anacaona was taken prisoner. It's assumed that this was July 1503. She was taken to Santo Domingo and imprisoned in the precursor of La Fortaleza, Osama. So if we use the scholarly estimate of July, she was imprisoned for 3 months. That would mean August, September, October. So in October of 1503, Anacaona was put on trial and found guilty. She was taken out in chains to the public square and publicly hung. Being hung was reserved for traitors. We have no idea what happened to her body, but we can assume that they discarded it just like they did all the other indigenous people. Even though Nicolás de Ovando, we have several letters from him, it doesn't seem like he ever wrote about her or even about what happened. But in my mind, I can imagine that after all the dancing, after all the food, suddenly being tied up must have confused her. But what Nicolás de Ovando did to Anacaona and her people made it all the way back to Spain, and also to the ears of Columbus when he's finally rescued by Ovando almost a year later on June 28th, 1504. He is brought back to La Española, extremely sick and blind. He then makes arrangements to return to Spain with his son and brother. They arrive in Spain November 7th, 1504. So we know that when Queen Isabella died on November 26, 1504, she was informed of what happened on the island. And Colón never returned because he ends up dying on May 20th, 1506 in Valladolid, España. And Oviedo remained on the island, causing havoc and destruction for all of the indigenous people that lived there. But her death and the subjugation of Jaragua did not bring immediate peace as Ovando had wanted it to. It actually provoked Higüey in a new uprising sprang up from La Tarde Roja. We know that after Higüey, several other villages also revolted. We know that Guava and Aniguayagua also revolted. It took them about 6 months to stop these rebellions. Nicolás's bloodthirst did bring relative peace to the island for several years, but the way he went about it was so cruel that he was called back to Spain in 1509. By that time, he had become rich. He had more than 300,000 sembraderos de yuca. He also had sembraderos de ajes, or what we today would call batata. And during that time, this was money. This made you rich. He even have recorded at least 16 places that he owned. And this is not mentioning all the indigenous people who served under him and who he essentially owned. El mismo Diego Colón wrote que tiene comendador en Santo Domingo 10 solares en que entre la mitad del pueblo y lo mejor, y no hay un lugar de toda la isla que no tenga las mejores haciendas de ella. And it seems like none of the things that he did touched his heart. For when he returned to Spain in 1509, he wrote the following to the king. He said, Yo escribo a almacén que de mi parte suplique a vuestra alteza. Lo que yo suplico es que vuestra alteza mande suplir la necesidad que me queda de pagar lo que debo en la isla española, que certifico a vuestra alteza que quedó en deuda sobre 6,000 pesos de oro. Que se pueda pagar y acabar las obras que tenía comenzadas en Santo Domingo, para que pedir licencia a vuestra alteza, pero quitándose los indios que la sostienen, será dar con todo el través. Beso las reales manos de vuestra alteza, me haga merced de mandar que no se me quiten los indios en nuberías de casa que yo tenía en encomienda. So much for Christianity. Years later, Guati, the 16-year-old who had survived La Tarde Roja, described Anacaona in the following way. Sí la vi, she said. Ya era una señora de unos 38 o 40 años. Tenía los senos erguidos, las curvas suaves, era blanca como la savia madre, el pelo muy largo, los ojos muy negros. La admiré mucho cuando la conocí.